looks like a devil, man, a demon.
And this thing is big.
And the next thing I know, it was right over top of us.
3, 2, 1.
Welcome back to the Lost Frequency Podcast. I'm Tom.
And I'm Rye.
And today we have Mary Rodwell, all the way from the great country of Australia, joining us. She's a ufologist, and she's going to blow our minds.
Awesome. So I'm going to welcome Mary to the Lost Frequency Podcast.
Hello, Rye and Tom. Nice to meet you.
Hi, Mary. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too. All right, Mary. So yeah, you're coming from Australia. Tell us a little bit about yourself and where our listeners can find you.
Well, you just have to dial up my name on Google or Safari or whatever, and there are lots of information there and presentations as well. But I live in Queensland, which is obviously in the eastern states of Australia. And I've been working in this field now probably about 30 years. And have worked with about 3,500 individuals, families, and children in that time. So it's global in terms of my work. I started out, I'm principal and founder of the Australian Close Encounter Resource Network, although I'm involved in a lot of other organizations, and one I'll speak about a little bit today. But my background primarily was as a nurse and a midwife. And I've been a counselor for over 35 years as well, working in grief and bereavement, a whole range of sorts of family issues, all that kind of, that was my standard until one day a gentleman came to me and told me something that changed my life and my work when he said, for this, there's no support groups for this. They just think you're crazy, and told me about his extraterrestrial experiences. And that was really the beginning of this journey in the last 30 years.
Wow. And how did you take that when he approached you and said, there's no support groups for this? What was your first initial reaction to that?
Well, he said something. He said, I've heard you're open-minded, and thankfully I am. And really what was convincing was this gentleman was very mature, very articulate. He talked about marks on his body. He said that his family were having experiences. So it wasn't just him. It was his partner and the children were all having experiences. And he said, and most people just think you're a loony, just crazy. And he wanted someone primarily to help his partner who was really struggling with this. And that was what was synchronous about that was I'd fortunately, because I think I was born with a book in my hand. I'd already read 2 books very synchronously prior to him coming through the door. And I always feel there's a big plan that they get you ready for what your next job is, as it were. And I read a book by Dr. John Mack, Abduction, Human Encounters with Aliens. And Dr. John Mack was as you may already know, was a former psychiatric professor at Harvard University, who wrote about this and wrote another book after that as well. What he was saying was that he came in as a skeptic, but after working with a number of experiences was very convinced that this was real. And after that, I also read a book by Whitley Strieber, who was the classic book Communion, and that was from his personal experience. And those two I'd just read very recently, and in walks this lovely gentleman who's still a good friend. He's an author of 4 books himself. And his name's Ellis Taylor. He lives in England now. And Ellis really was very, very compelling. And what made it even more interesting was I was doing advanced counseling at the time, took his case to a supervision, thinking I'm going to blow their minds. They're either going to say he's crazy or I'm crazy for presenting it or whatever. And what was fascinating about that, doing that supervision, was everyone in the group, some of them were, you know, social workers, some of them were, there was a uniting minister, and all of them started to tell me about some strange experiences they had. So it almost opened the door to say, you know, we've had strange stuff too, which is not what I expected at all. But what it proved to me is there's an awful lot that is not honored in modern psychology that actually is real to people in terms of their multidimensional experiences. So that just intrigued me even more.
Yes, I'd imagine that, you know, sometimes people, when they're having these experiences, that for the most part, they just need someone to listen to. Because I've been through psychiatric help myself for depression and anxiety. And sometimes you just need to know that someone else is in the pond with you. Someone else is treading water with you. And of course, when one person steps up and speaks with you, and you're doing it in a manner that's professional and friendly, then other people will definitely come out and speak to you as well about these things. And that's a very powerful thing that you're doing.
Well, it was very clear to me after working already in counseling and working in medical practice and counseling agencies, there's a very big difference between an experience that is otherworldly and someone who is unwell, mentally unwell. Sometimes they can be together, and it will often be nobody's listened and they've got overwhelmed by it, and that can lead to illness at the end of the day. But there's a very distinct difference between someone who's saying, I've had this extraordinary experience, I'm still trying to work it out. And they are often confused too, because part of them knows it's real. Another part of them is questioning their sanity, because in modern psychiatry and psychology, unless it's coming from your 5 senses, you're taught not to trust it. And this is the problem with the model of psychiatry and psychology in today's understanding, or mainstream understanding, when all of us know we've had experiences that can't be explained through our 5 senses. We've all had intuition, knowings, feelings, sensing, and wondering where they've come from. And it's only when you honor the fact that there's another part of you accessing those realms, then you can understand more of this. And I'll bring in a bit of a statistic here just to clarify. I was part of one of the founders of the Dr. Edgar Mitchell Free Foundation, which was basically doing a survey of 4,200 people, 600 questions, asking them questions. And this was all conscious recall. One of the astounding statistics, which many ufologists struggle with, is that we discovered that 75% of those that had encounters were out of body, not physical. Only 25% was out of 4,000 odd people globally. So this explains so much more of why they can't come back with a bit of the craft, or, you know, or have something more tangible, because it's their consciousness that's had the interaction, not their physical body.
Sorry, Mary, but what do you think that suggests? What would you think that suggests psychologically? Like, what is this like in the world in which we are, and these people are coming to you with these experiences, when 75% of them are out of body? What would that suggest to you?
Well, what it suggests to me, first of all, that consciousness is primary here. That what we're looking at is something that is about consciousness, and it's not just about a physical experience. And the reason that's so important is that we've discovered through our research, and now it's called the Consciousness and Contact Research Institute, by the way. What we've discovered is that people can have encounters after a near-death experience, an out-of-body experience, astral travel, remote viewing, through through shamanic experiences, through healing experiences, through channeling. The whole range can start off as being a spiritual, connecting to spirits or whatever, but ultimately with all these different intelligences. So what you're doing is you're working on another level of frequency, if you want, which enables you to access other realms, other dimensions, other intelligences, whether it's extraterrestrial, interdimensional, extra-dimensional, transdimensional, or beings from our future. Once you access that through whatever means, Kundalini awakening or some other experience, you can then find not only are you seeing the angelic realms, perhaps elementals, religious figures, but light beings, and all these other beings of different forms. So it's not just ufology that is understanding that now. It's actually covering all of them. And we call that the contact modalities. All of them are relevant.
That's extremely interesting. So what you're saying is, if you're opening a door, maybe like you're practicing shamanism, and you're opening this door, you're not opening a door of shamanism. You're opening a door of consciousness to access so much more. So it's not like, oh, I'm practicing Kundalini meditations. That's all that's all I'm working for. No. It's kind of like you open this door to a gymnasium that's full of all these other conscious beings or conscious entities. Interdimensional, extra dimensional. Wow.
Absolutely right. And what is important here is how you interpret that. For example, if you're very religious, you may look and see a being that looks like an angelic being. But if you're not religious, you may say that's a light being. Right. It's all into interpretation.
Right, because your interpretation of your reality kind of like then is expressed into your seeing of what it is for yourself. We've been discussing this, Rye and I, about like if you're a religious person, you might see a demon, and another person might see a clown. And I've also heard a podcast where it might be connected somehow too. But
yeah, that is amazing. So yeah, it's like it's all relative to you, to your experiences, and what you are, maybe your consciousness needs to see, or that's what you interpreted it as. That's amazing.
It's related to your belief system. So whatever it is that you're believing, and one of the biggest issues for those that have a religious belief, for example, and taught not to have anything to do with anything otherworldly because it's demons or whatever, will come in and absolutely terrified when they get communication or downloads or whatever, thinking it's all evil, when in fact it may not be at all like that. It's just that their old programming or their religious beliefs is saying this is dangerous or whatever, when in fact they may be getting very beautiful information, very helpful information, or information that enhances their lives in some way. So they'll come to me with that fear. And when we explore it, often it's not what they've believed at all. It's something that's been very positive and very helpful.
What about Mary, what about the shared psychedelic experiences? I've heard where people will sit around and they all take psilocybin mushrooms and they will have a shared quote unquote religious experience. So how would you explain that if they're kind of more or less seeing the same thing?
Well, absolutely. I'll tell you a little story. Many years ago, I think it was in about 2006, I was in England at Oxford, and I was staying actually with Ellis for a short time, and he'd organized for me to speak at the forum in Oxford University. And there was a fellow of I've forgotten, one of them was the speaker, but the other one was an astrophysicist from Manchester University. And I was sort of thrown in at the deep end, presenting this is a reality. And you could see their faces, looking at this strange English woman who comes from Western Australia, talking about aliens and UFOs. You could imagine what they were thinking. And I knew exactly what they were thinking. But would you believe, after half an hour of each speaking, including the astrophysicists saying it basically is impossible for us to be visited and all the rest of it, I actually won the forum, believe it or not. I still don't know how I did that. But the thing that was interesting was one of the students came up to me afterwards and he said to me, I have a friend. And I thought, yeah. The friend took magic mushrooms and he saw a grey being. Was that genetic, or was he in fact, genetic memory, or was that in fact real? And I said to him, it will be absolutely real. That's what you were experiencing. And that was in 2006. And since then, it's been pretty obvious that what all of these different combinations do, psychedelics or whatever, ayahuasca or whatever, what they're doing is shifting our perceptions to a greater reality, more frequencies, more dimensions. And what that enables us to do then is access that. That's what, you know, shamanism is in the indigenous communities anyway. They know this. They know there's spirits and beings and whatever, all these different intelligences in different levels. And, you know, for some people, you know, when they connect to what they call their guides, it might be a being that looks like a mantis, or it might be a being that looks like a lion or a feline of some kind. And many are seeing these different forms. So, you know, at the end of the day, what is the problem with our 3D programmed reality is it's a limiting and limited version of what actually reality is. And we are programmed to believe that's all there is in Western society, which is actually just allowing your five senses any kind of credibility when we have sensing, knowing, feeling, awareness, and access to all of this once we allow ourselves to honor it and allow ourselves to acknowledge it. And then you open the door.
Mary, do you think there will ever be an overlap with Western science and, say, Eastern
mysticism
or shamanism? Was that the word?
Shamanism.
Thank you. Shamanism.
Yeah.
That's a good one. Eventually, do you think there's going to be some tipping point at which the material science will catch up with the other part of the world?
I think it's happening. And what we're doing, I'll just get this hold of this for you. This book here is one of the it's called A Greater Reality, The New Paradigm of Non-Local Consciousness, the Paranormal and Contact Modalities. And this has got in it astrophysicists, we've got medical doctors, we've got a whole range of stories and articles about consciousness and how they've had experiences. So it's bringing this into a reality through many academics. Right. I've met many that have had experiences, lawyers, doctors, nurses, social workers, celebrities, politicians, and whatever. This isn't just one social economic. Go on.
Sorry to interrupt you, Mary. I have a question. Are they, when they're coming forward and in this book, are they actually giving out are they like giving out their names, or are they remaining anonymous? That is something I find curious, because if they're stepping forward and stepping out, you know, that's powerful.
They're all the names, and some of them have had profound experiences. I've written in it as well, and I've explained my work, but also some things that I've experienced that I was able to look at from sort of two perspectives. One as a researcher, working with people with experiences, and also some unusual things that have happened with me that have helped me understand how they have experienced it, because it's been very useful with my own experience to understand how it's happened for them. So I think we're all given the tools we need to work in whatever way that we're meant to. I think it's all set up in a way.
I agree. Like you said, how you were being prepared. You know, you just read these two books, and then all of a sudden you had someone approach you. It was as if you were being prepared, and it's like they didn't approach you until you had read those books, and it's very synchronistic. You know, it's like, and I totally believe in synchronicities and everything. You know, manifestation. I totally, everything happens for a reason. I do want to circle back to the question when you said 75% of these encounters were out-of-body experiences. Were some of them in dream state, or were they just like? Can you explain that a little bit further about these out-of-body experiences?
What's interesting in the questionnaire that I give to people who want to know whether or not this is relevant to them in some way or another, one of them is about dreams that are not really dreams. Normally, when we dream, we wake up and within a few minutes, we've lost the dream. It's gone, you know. With an encounter or an experience on board craft, and they may say, I've dreamt that I've been on spacecraft or whatever. Is that real, or is that just my imagination, or what have you? And often the dream where they've been on a spacecraft, they've never forgotten it. Like it could have happened 25 years ago, 10 years ago, or whatever. They've never forgotten it. And I'm saying it's most likely that's not a dream, because normal dreams, as I say, you forget very quickly. The fact that they will remember details of it. And I've only written recently a presentation on a woman who had what she thought was a dream on a spaceship with some of her friends. And the next day, literally, they rang her up and said, we had this strange dream where we were on a spaceship with you. And that was her friends, as well as, and there was one gentleman that was actually, he thought, again, he was having a dream being on the smaller spaceship with this lady. And he remembers saying to her, this is amazing. I won't use the F word. This is absolutely amazing. She remembers that. And the next day he contacted her and said, I dreamt I was on this little spaceship, and then we went to the big one and it was amazing. And he found himself, there was a bright light. He thought it was a lorry coming. And the next thing he knows, he's 3 miles away from where he was walking. They dropped him off 3 miles away.
Wow.
So, you know, this is the kind of thing where you just say, hold on a minute. This isn't just a fantasy. This is, and that's what I mean about dreams that are not dreams. Often it's you out of body and you're remembering the out of body experience. And some have amazing recall of these but the children often, you know, they will remember it as is. You know, I remember one 8-year-old explaining to me that he often goes up on the craft. They're teaching them in a group with other children that some of them don't look human. And I remember him saying to me, and they teach you how to use your mind. And it's very complex sometimes, the information they give you. And I'll never forget his response to me. And I said to him, so you talk about this complex information. What kind of things did they teach you? And he just looked me straight in the eye and said, it's too complex for you.
Really? Wow.
So there I had it. I wouldn't understand. And I mean, this is an 8-year-old telling me this.
Yes. What percentage, because you were saying this gentleman that experienced a dream, he's excited. What percentage of people are excited about the dreams compared to the people or dreams or experiences compared to the people who are afraid of them? Are there many people who are just like, it was crazy, it was awesome? Is that commonplace?
It's more common than you'd believe. The trouble is with the truth embargo and the agendas going on from those that know the truth is generally they want us to be frightened. And the bottom line is that it's not like that at all. To give you an example of that, when they try and promote that, you know, this evil agenda and what have you. First of all, I go back to the fact that we are a created, we are part of an intelligent design. And there's lots of evidence to show that we have been created by certain intelligences. Some say at least 12 different species. Some say at least 22 different species. And the gods that have come down through the ages, who do you think they are? They're not gods at all. They're ET races that have come down and interacted with us and appeared like gods because they had the technology. There's so much evidence for that now, you know, that most people can see that what that is. Now, if they've got an evil agenda, they had plenty of time to take us out. Anyway, easy.
I agree. I agree totally. When they're trying to create a fear of everybody to be as scared of, oh, we're gonna be attacked. Well, that would have happened. It's not. Whatever is being projected is not right. Yeah.
What we've noticed when we asked for the ultimate understanding of those 4,200 individuals, we asked them how they felt about it as they'd come to go through maybe the fear to start with, this is happening, this is real, am I crazy, all that stuff, to a point where their lives have been totally changed. And 85% of them, now that's a big number, 85% noticed a psycho-spiritual transformation, which meant their whole attitude to life changed. They become more ecologically aware. They changed their diet. They wanted to do things for humanity. They feel connected to everyone. And a whole range of other things happened after their experiences. There was only 15% that said for them it was still horrendous and they believed they were evil. And what people don't know of the 15%, I've been in experiencer groups where there's maybe 70 individuals. And there's always been a highly traumatized group of them, and generally they're the ones, and I know people are going to struggle with this, that have been through the military abduction scenario. That's my lab, and I don't know if people know about my lab, I don't know if you know about my lab, but there are agencies on this planet that have the technology to abduct people and have done it, taking them to underground bases and emulate the abduction experience because they want to. And there's books written on it. Helmut Lammer's one of them. Dr. Helmut Lammer's written about this. I have met them. I have worked with them where they're in underground bases being told, drugged, interrogated, raped, the whole lot. And what the military in these groups, these covert military do is they want to know what happens on the board craft, what they learn, all these kind of things. They're after information. But the person is so traumatized by that they never talk about it. Very few will fit, because who's going to believe them that there are human beings doing that to them? Who's going to believe it? So this
exactly.
This is the complexity of this, and it's not black and white. And it's something that the public needs to know about. There's other agendas. What is really crucial here is that when you get 85% saying that ET experiences have been transformative, there is the result of that agenda. What's the result of the military agenda is terrifying people from anything to do with ETs. And that 15%, I would say a high percentage of them have had those kinds of experiences. So it's not straightforward. This is very, very complex. And, the average person has no idea that we have these kinds of, the technology that certain groups have on this planet is very identical to what the ETs have.
Do you feel that Betty and Barney Hill were one of those that were abducted by the government, by the military?
I don't know.
Okay, sorry.
It's hard to say because I haven't worked with them. I only know the story that they had, which seems to be very credible in terms of what they've interacted with. But a lot of the governments, if you notice when the sightings of a craft, often suddenly there are black helicopters.
Yes. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Right. Because once they come through into our reality, that's when then they can be monitored by our military. And that's what is going on. Okay. Because they can't when they're bending time. But they
Mary,
can once
I'm sorry, Mary. What do you feel about this whole self-disclosure thing going on by the U.S. government? What do you feel about that?
I think it's orchestrated, very orchestrated. And Dr. Carol Rosen, who's a good friend, has said all along that Werner von Braun always said they would use that as the final thing to fear the ETs, a false flag of alien invasion. I believe, and Dr. Stephen Greer also mentions that as well. There's many others. The truth is that we have artificial craft that have been designed by our military that emulate the spacecraft as well, and they're used in covert programs as well. So people could be seeing I don't know, a triangular craft that actually isn't ET, that is one of ours. So this is the mix that most of the public don't realize. And my understanding is that the governments have been told, that you've got to start coming out and telling the truth to the people or we will do it. But they're trying to control the narrative. They're trying to control it in a way that gets people very, very scared so that they will trust the government.
Who told them, Mary? Who told them that?
Well, the understanding is that many of these beings come from various star systems, other dimensions, and what have you. Now, the people that are having experiences with them or having downloads from them and what have you, many of them are now being told this information, that the governments are basically going to have to get the finger out and start saying stuff. So you're getting soft disclosure, but it's with a narrative that suits the governments, because ultimately they don't want us to trust what we're seeing. And if we do see it, it could very well not be them. It could be the military and what have you, creating the whole fear story.
Now,
I can see.
I've heard a psyop on a psyop, we'll call it, that Project Bluebeam is just a diversion, that it's not really going to happen, but it's for us to. it's for us to believe that the government is actually going to do Project Bluebeam, when in fact it's actual aliens that are coming, like generous and, these loving aliens, and we're not going to believe her. Like, no, that's just the government. I've heard this as a theory as well.
There are certain things that people will know that make it a false flag, and that's because the real ET technology is seamless in many ways. When you look at it, we haven't quite managed a lot of that with these reconstructed ones that they put out there. And I think the other thing is that those that have had experiences with many of these intelligences that they feel connected to, like people say, well, I feel I'm part Pleiadian or part Arcturian. It's part of their DNA that's been activated that relates to that particular DNA that they've been given. So if somebody says, I just feel I'm from somewhere else, I don't belong here. Often that's what's being activated.
Seriously, because that's what I've been feeling this for 25 years. I'm not from here.
Yeah.
I don't know where, but this is not where I'm from.
And I've said this as well. I've said that, like, whenever I look up at the stars, I feel like that's home. Like, don't get me wrong, I love living on Earth, but when I look up at the stars, that's home. And I think dreams are one of our most powerful tools. And that night that I did that, I was like, okay, when I go to sleep, I want to know why that is. And I was given a movie. I was like, and when you're talking about dreams that people remember, like, I do have abduction, I do have alien operation dreams, nothing painful. But like where they replace something up here, they replace two parts of my brain up here. And I remember that to this day. That was probably like 8 years ago. This other dream was around 8 years ago as well. And I was told that I was from another star system. I came here in the belly of my mother. I was a fetus at the time, and
like Superman.
Kind of like Superman, but but it was an amazing story. I'll have to share that one of these times on one of our podcasts. But it's a full length movie. I started writing a book about it, but I got sidetracked.
Well, that's what I would say, Rye, about this sensing, knowing, feeling. That doesn't come from nowhere. It comes from your multidimensional self guiding you and giving you information, because you may not be aware the science behind the fact that in our DNA, we access miniature wormholes that go into other areas of space and time. And what we're doing with our multidimensional self, that knowing, that sensing, that feeling, is as we seek information, we're putting that frequency out and we're tapping into it through space time. And it gives us, that buzz you get in your body. That's confirming it. That's showing you that you're tapping into that. It's all there.
Mary, you're so motivational. You make me feel like I'm not as crazy as I thought I was.
I agree. Like, I think there's like this ether that we tap into for all these, like, everything's already been created. We just haven't created it physically yet. Everything is there. We can tap into this, and you're saying opening these wormholes and bringing this information in. Like a prime example would be Nikola Tesla. He talked about that. He talked about being from Venus. He had some amazing inventions, and he would just create these things. It's just fantastic.
Well, to give you an example of that, in my book, The New Human, where I talk about a lot of these children as well as the adults, one of the children that I spoke to was a 9-year-old at the time. He's not 9 anymore. And I was speaking to his father, and he said, can I speak to Mary? And I said, why do you want to speak to me? He says, because of your frequency. And then he explained to me that he was from Orion. He had been a light physicist working with time travel technology. And he said he's come on to this planet, and he said the nearest to his understanding is Nikola Tesla's work, because all the other scientists basically haven't got a clue. This is a 9-year-old explaining to me. And also what was interesting is that he told me also that he would go to other sacred sites. And when he goes to the sacred sites, he gets downloads of information. It's like it acts as a conduit to give him more information. And that's why he was going to a lot of the sacred sites. Now, this is a 9-year-old explaining this to me.
So to go back to the soft disclosure for a second, I have a question.
Yeah.
Mary, what's your opinion on why now? Why now? Is something going to happen? Is there some type of event going to happen in which something is revealed, and that's why they're telling?
Or we're raising
we're raising our
level,
consciousness, or what is going on?
Absolutely. Tom, what has been very clear with the hundreds that I've spoken to is that they are aware something is ahead, something hugely significant to the planet, a kind of awakening, an activation of consciousness. And they're aware that it's going to be literally planetary wide, and that it will change everything that we know. And some are calling it an event. Some have talk about going to another frequency, the fifth density and what have you. There's a whole range of them. And what is going with that is this activation of what I think is the dormant DNA, because many of those that are connecting, it's all to do with the activation of dormant DNA, which is our heritage. So this is what's going on right now. And that's why so many people are waking up, and so many people are changing the way they look at things, changing the way that they operate and what have you. And this is, and this is leading us, I think, to some kind of major event of consciousness. And this is why so many people feel anxiety. They may feel trepidation. They may feel excitement. They may feel a whole range of things, because part of them knows this is what's ahead. This isn't just imagination. This is what they're feeling. And everything that is chaos on this world at the moment is part of that. This is why.
Mary, do you think that everybody is waking up? Or do you think there's some people who won't be coming along with us on this awakening?
I've got two mixed kind of information on that. There is a 12-year-old that explains that everyone ultimately will reach that level. She's saying it's going through the solar system, that it's happening everywhere. And it's also happening to the animals. Everything is being upgraded. And others say there are some that are going to choose to stay in this reality and will obviously choose another time. So I don't know.
Like a split almost. It's like almost like there's going to be a split. I was thinking that there would be like a split of like a world on top of a world, almost like we don't we'll move away, but we'll still be there. But that's how I feel. I feel like it's
some are saying that the new Earth is already there, waiting for us to join it, like it's in a different frequency.
Exactly.
So as we raise our frequency, we then move into the new frequency. It may be that, or it may be more than that, because the other thing that I know about that looks very credible is about the space arcs, which you may or may not know about. And I've just done a presentation for Prague, the SUNY University, on this particular presentation, and it's about a past life connection to what may happen and may be happening here. And to cut a long story short, the lady that I talked about, that her friends were on the craft with her, and this gentleman wanted to know why there was a message that she didn't understand or didn't remember. So I did a regression with her, and she went back to the time of Atlantis, where she was there with these friends, and they were hoping to make the change then. It didn't work, that there was it was compromised. So they've come this time because that's the mission this time, is to help with the shift and the change on this planet. And what was fascinating to me was that she was seeing what looked like craft, like space arcs, like craft not only underground, but some underwater, one particularly around the Bermuda Triangle. And she was seeing that there. Within a week, I was looking at Dr. Michael Sala's work with JP, a whistleblower, who was talking about the military knowing there are these arcs underground where there are huge beings, avatars in stasis, including beings, and these were being activated by consciousness right now. And look, there's a lot more to it, but it's not just in the Bermuda Triangle. When she became part of a remote viewing group, they also saw others around the planet, including one in Romania. And if you know about what's going on in Romania in a it's Transylvanian Sunrise writes about, they found in 2003, I think it was, a cavern by the Sphinx in Romania, and underneath is this huge cavern that only let you in if you had the right consciousness, and it had all this technology that came from the ancient gods, if you like, or beings that show our true history. But underneath that remote viewed is actually a pyramid and an ark, another of these craft.
Holy cow.
Activated. And to add to that is the understanding. They're all over the world. There's 2 in Brazil, there's 1 in Australia, there's 1 in Iraq, Egypt, and they're all being activated across the planet.
Why do you think this information is being suppressed, and by who, and for what purpose?
Because
but
they want
who is controlling? Why are they doing that?
The thing is, the military, obviously, the covert military and what have you, and other groups that know about this technology. I mean, there's so much technology we're not given access to that they have. Some say 30 years in advance of what we've got. Some say 50 years in advance. Everything from healing technology to free energy to whatever. Dr. Greer talks about it and others talk about it. You know, the whistleblowers talk about this as well. What they're trying to do is keep the lid on it because they don't want the public to know what's going on. Because once the public realizes that we've been polluting our planet when we didn't need to, for a start, because there is technology for free energy for everyone that was being known about now for many, many years. That's just one thing. Healing technology, a whole range of technologies that would change our planet forever, that should have been given to us. What do you think they're going to do to the people that have hidden this from us? What do you think is going to happen to them if the public find out?
Watch out,
They're
Bill
not
Gates.
See, so they are really, there's going to have to be some kind of deal done.
Right. So what they did with the technology that we have that's now 100 years old, like the internal combustion engine, for example, they won't be able to monetize it and keep us under their thumb. They want utter control, which is, for me, some type of evil, some type of evil type entity that might be poking its finger into this reality as well.
There's certainly a suggestion that there are certain groups of non-human intelligences that have agendas on this planet and are working through various people. And I can't dismiss any of that, because we do know that certain entities that are self-serving, whether or not they're extraterrestrial or interdimensional or whatever, have also had access to controlling the narrative as well. So that it's not black and white. The majority of what I understand about these ETs is the majority seem to be absolutely benevolent, that are wanting to see us join them, you know, to the galactic community, and are creating the space and the support to enable us to be part of their galactic community. And when I say that, a lot of the children are in communication telepathically. There are lots of people having experiences that are in communication telepathically with various ET, both physical and non-physical, whether it's Pleiadians, whether or not it's Arcturus, Andromeda. There are interdimensional ones as well that are, have come in. I remember the 10-year-old telling me that he came through a portal in the sun. So he came from another dimension. There are many that have come from other dimensions to join in on this awakening of humanity, that have incarnated to humans, so that they can be part of this shift in consciousness that is going to be so important and so dramatic for humanity. And it's all about that, really, is upgrading us to the point where we can interact intergalactically and with all these different intelligences.
Fantastic.
That is amazing. Mary, when you're talking about these arcs, and you mentioned Iraq, now I know we're talking about the military before as well. Do you believe that maybe that was one of the reasons why Iraq was, we'll say, wrongfully invaded the second time? You know, when they were wrongfully invaded, was that to get tech, or, you know, to
spy?
Yes. And I can more or less, I get away with saying it now. I couldn't in 2003 because I was told by an intuitive that the reason they had gone into Iraq wasn't anything to do with weapons of mass destruction. They knew that Saddam Hussein had access to ancient technologies, etc. And they were worried about that and wanted it. If you know, the Baghdad Museum was ransacked.
Right.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
And when I learned this, I found, well, I thought it was a bit bizarre. So I talked to somebody in intelligence. I can't say who they were, but they told me not to speak about it, not to talk about it, not to write about it, not to phone anyone about it, basically not to say anything, which told me everything I needed to know. That this was okay. And now with the arcs and understanding, do you realize that in Ukraine, there are supposedly 2 arcs there in Ukraine? Putin has one in Russia. Okay, just to add flavor to the possibilities. You can think about that one.
What, Mary, can we just take a quick 1 minute break here? We just have to switch locations. Just 1 second. We'll come right back. Much. All right, and welcome back. All right, sorry about that, Mary. Thanks for waiting, and welcome back. So yes, so you were going on. Please continue. Sorry for interrupting you on that one, but where do we pick off of? The Iraqian. The arcs and Ukraine and Russia.
War. Right.
Yes.
So there may be more to the Ukrainian war with Russia than we are told, but we already know that anyway. But the US military do know about the arcs. But the interesting thing is you can't get into the arcs unless you've got a certain consciousness. And this is what the whistleblower JP was saying when Dr. Michael Salla interviewed him. But there are arcs elsewhere. And there are also these beings in stasis, these huge beings in stasis that appear to be waiting for something, whether they're going to be activated or what, we don't know. So this is all possibly part of an event that is nothing to do with the military whatsoever. And then what was fascinating to me is I'm doing this regression, finding out a link from a past life to do with Atlantis. And we know that there is suggestions Atlantis is around that area with the Bermuda Triangle and what have you as well. And the fact that I found out later how it linked into that regression that I did within a week. You know, we talked about things being put into place and how you're led into information as it's time. Yes. Well, I suspect that was why that came up, because it convinced me there was more to this when you've got all these, this extra validation coming from other sources that say the same thing. And you have to say, okay, there's something here.
Is there Mary, we're talking about this inevitability of a consciousness expansion or a change in frequencies. What can the average person, I don't know if that's the correct terminology, do to further this along so we can get to...
So we can get into the arcs.
The next, I want to get to the new Earth. I want to get to the new technology and love and peace. How do we get there?
Well, I think that as, we're waking up, we are guided by another part of ourselves. You call it your superconscious, your higher self, oversoul, whatever it is. We're guided because we change. We find ourselves feeling all those kinds of things about, goodwill to each other, trying to be different, changing the way we do things. And I think each soul is leading that person. I've always said that, we present ourselves with all the tools we need for our particular life. Everything is there. The trouble is that we're told right from the beginning that you're this, you're no good, you're a sinner. Well, in Catholic Church, you're a sinner from the word go, aren't you? Because dear old
exactly.
Eve ate the apple, which I thought was most unfair. But all these things we're told we're not good enough. We need pieces of paper to prove we're good enough. We have to do this to be good enough and whatever. Ultimately, our soul is guiding the journey. And I always say your soul isn't going to let you miss the bus because it worked too darn hard to get you here. So if you trust if you trust that and that, what's inside you, not what other people are telling you. This is about you honoring you and your own knowing, your own sensing, your own feeling. This isn't about, all these other gurus telling you what to do. This is about you resonating to your own truth. That's all we've got at the end of the day, is that. That's the only thing we've got that can guide us. Everything
Mary,
else we can listen.
We got to hang out, Mary. I think I'm going to get a plane to Australia, which I've never been, and I'm going to take you out for a cup of coffee and just feel that vibe, because you're definitely touching something in me. I'm sure in Rye as well, that I've felt for a very long time, and I'm sure a lot of our listeners have felt for a very long time. And I want to thank you for that, because that was very, very interesting. And thank you.
Now, Mary, how much time do you have? Are you willing to go a little bit longer? Because this interview is fantastic. For us, this is fantastic. We would just have to start it over again, if that's all right with you. Or do you have something else here?
I'm all right for about another half an hour, if that's useful to you.
Perfect. That's exactly what we want. Okay. So we're just going to end this interview here, and then we're going to do what's called an extended episode just after this. So we're just going to do our exit, and just hold on tight. Okay. I will send you another link. Okay.
Okay.
That was a great way to end it right there.
We close with good night, good luck, and God bless all of you on the good earth.
Long live the cause of freedom.